Hey, everybody. Welcome to what? Episode 2 of Leewayology. Yes. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Really happy you're all in the joining me and Mike today. Everybody have a great time in the chat. Enjoy yourselves. And hey, we're actually going to try to take live call-ins today as well. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So last week we had on Eddie Sutton, which was, of course, a great honor and pleasure of mine. And today we have on the great Mike Gibbons, and I couldn't be happier. Why? Well, because I am finally getting the chance to interview the musicians in, well, one of my favorite bands growing up. It's a huge pleasure for me. So if anyone wasn't here last week, I told the story briefly about how I came to, just be absolutely blown away and mesmerized by the band Leeway. It was in August of 91, I believe. It was the Guar tour where Leeway was opening up for Guar at the Ritz. And I spoke about it last week, so we don't need to belabor that point. But I do remember the hair. Yes, I remember the hair. How could anyone forget the man stalking stage left? You never knew what he looked like, but he always had that Gibson Les Paul riding high up there, shredding those incredibly fast and precise licks, doing those incredible leads, but we never saw him. We never saw him behind that shock of long hair, and the man was always headbanging and bobbing around like you couldn't believe. The guy was a dynamo on stage. In fact, I didn't even know what this guy looked like until I met him a couple weeks ago. So here we have some old pictures, of course, of the men themselves. And I like this picture a lot because, well, here we have the hair. The hair, yes. And look at this guy smiling. I mean, this is about one of the greatest reactions you could ever get right here. Just a dude having a great time, smiling, looking right at our guest today as he did his thing on stage left. And yes, there he is in the back, again with the famous Les Paul. And of course, we can't forget the Marshall JCM 800 half stack, which was a huge part of the sound as well. Every now and then, if you were lucky and you had an eagle eye, you could see a glimpse of what this man looked like. But this was just a picture that captured a brief moment in time. Most of the time, well, we were seeing this right here. So today we have on the man himself, Mike Gibbons, and we are so happy to introduce him to our airwaves today as we go behind the hair. So without further ado, everybody, because as you all know, in this endeavor, it ain't about me. It's about we. So everybody, put your hands together for the man himself who stalked stage left underneath that shock of hair, playing the most massive, huge, powerful riffs imaginable, amazing leads. The one, Moet. I think you're going to want to be in your seat for this one. The only Mike Gibbons. Yes, Mike. Hey, how are you, man?
There's not much hair there anymore.
Well, I was saying, as I said to the audience, now we finally know.
I got a haircut eventually.
Yeah. So, Mike, thank you so much for joining me today on episode 2. And we're super happy to have you here today because, well, by your own admission, you're the forgotten member of Leeway. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.
Well, I always refer to myself as I was only in the band for 5 years out of the bands. The band went from 1984 to 1992, broke up, reformed, and went all the way from the end of 92 to, whenever, till the 99, 2000. And I was in the band only 5 years out of that time. I mean, there were guys in the band less than I was, but for someone who was more of a focal point and more of a contributor to the band, no one really, given the scene we had, nobody really, in other words, you could see Eddie walking down the street and AJ, and you'll know, oh, there goes those Leeway guys. I just look like every other metalhead, and that's fine. I'm not looking for a rock star. I don't need this Gene Simmons full standing status.
Right.
I'm just saying, I was just, I like to. Usually refer to the whole band as the forgotten band.
Yeah, I think that that's actually a great way to put it. I was talking with my mom today. I was actually out in Queens picking her up from JFK, and I was telling her what I'm doing tonight, and she's probably watching now because she remembers a lot of Leeway being played in the apartment when I was a
All right,
teenager,
cool.
and she was saying to me like, "What happened to those guys? They were great. Like
Thank you,
whatever
man.
happened?" And so I had to say, well, it just seems like, I mean, and you'll tell the story deeper than I ever could, but it just seems like a bad mix of bad management, a record company that didn't do you right, and some other issues that might have been, you guys might have been dealing with personally. And we'll let you tell those stories rather than me, because honestly, I don't even know them. That's why we're interviewing you. But no, you're forgotten no more, and you've never were forgotten, because I mean, geez, you were in the band 5 years, as you say, but it was the most critical period of that band. I mean, Born to Expire and Desperate Measures, let's face it, those are the albums that went down in history. As much as I do like the third and fourth albums, which you're not on, but it was really that duo of albums that it really changed things for me, and it changed things for a lot of people, and in my opinion made musical history. So you have a lot that you to be proud of, and I'm glad that that you're on the air and we can finally talk one-on-one. So Mike,
Well,
as i
thanks.
as I did with Eddie, I'm interested in the people. I'm interested in the sociology, the culture, the getting a little bit deeper than most. Of course, interested in the music as well, and we're going to talk about that plenty. But why don't you tell the audience a little bit about, well, where you grew up and your childhood, and and all that kind of stuff, and to help the audience out, we doing our Google Earth thing, which we're seeing all of New York City. Here's where I am right now, up in the Northwest Bronx, and you grew up in a little town in, I guess, well, Tuck, you tell us, because I'm actually really unfamiliar with Queens, despite having grown up in the city.
I grew up in a town in Queens County called Middle Village,
Uh huh.
and it was a very suburban like. It was rolling green lawns and not
Yeah.
really, not like Long Island, not like suburbia, but connected homes, mostly attached homes with tidy little lawns and neat homes, and the population was primarily Italian, Irish, German,
Uh huh.
and it was a middle class area for sure, working class, middle class.
And are you, and Gibbons, I'm assuming, is an Irish name. Are you full
Yeah.
Irish?
Oh, 100%. Both my parents come from the other side. I'm first generation.
Oh, no kidding. So what did your parents do
100%
for,
Irish.
what did your dad do for a living?
My dad, like every other Irishman, pretty much went into the airline industry. That's what they did because they couldn't find work doing anything else. I mean, my
Really?
dad came here without knowing anybody, so he started working as a baggage handler at JFK.
No kidding. All right. No, that opens up a whole new can of worms, man, because
Yeah.
JFK 1960s, any mob stories for us?
Oh no, nothing like that. I mean, this is when it was Idlewild, right? Then it went to John F.
Yeah.
Um, he worked for Pan Am,
Uh-huh.
Pan American Airways, and he became he was a baggage handler for years. He used to work the 4 to midnight shift, and like every other Irish, and he worked there for years until he was able to get his way into management, and he started working at the Pan Am building. He became a white collar guy,
Oh,
and
in the city,
just
in the
a mid
city.
level pencil pushing guy. Nothing, no big boss or anything like that.
So so the Pan Am building, you're talking about the one on 42nd Street
Yes,
in Manhattan.
the old
The
MetLife,
old, right,
the MetLife building, the when it was Pan Am.
exactly, right above Grand Central Station.
Hmm.
So, and your mom, did she work, or was she a stay at home?
No, no, no. She worked. My mom, like a lot of Irish women, went into nursing. She started in Belfast Hospital when she was young and did her internship there, and then came over. And my parents met here in Woodside on Roosevelt Avenue
Oh,
when
interesting.
it was
Okay.
an Irish community, when it was predominantly Irish back then, on 69th Street and Roosevelt Avenue. At the it's been a Korean church for ages now, but it used to be an Irish dance hall, and that's where they met.
Oh, that's wild. So they met in Queens here, and did you, so that was in Woodside, but you said you were born in Middle Village?
Right, but
So now what are we seeing here in Middle Village? What is this? What is this? A cemetery?
yeah, there's plenty. Middle Village is home to a lot of cemeteries: St. John's, All Faiths, Lutheran Cemetery, Mount Olivet. That's St. John's. I'm pretty sure that you got up right there.
Now, one of our viewers now, who's also a great friend of mine, New York City Crime Spot. He does great mob videos and unknown New York City crime videos.
Mhm.
He works at a cemetery in Queens. So he just wrote St. John's, the Mafia Cemetery.
Oh yeah, plenty of guys. The most famous one, I would say, has to be John Gotti, unless I'm wrong. If your friend thinks I'm wrong, but John Gotti is buried there. I'll never forget the day of his funeral. My
Oh
God.
man.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, the entire borough was backed up, like, but Middle Village was just like
Was
streets
Middle
were packed, and
was Middle Village a mob neighborhood as well, or just they were
oh yeah,
buried
I
there?
mean, yeah, there was sure there was plenty of activity going on in Middle Village.
All right,
There
so
was a
let's
case back in the '80s called the Pizza Connection between Howard Beach and Middle Village, something like that.
Oh, no kidding. Well, New York City Crime Spot's watching, so he'll chime in as appropriate. So he wrote Gotti, Luciano, DeMeo. Oh, DeMeo's
DeMeo's, yeah,
there,
right. DeMeo's there.
and so is Gambino, as this guy
Oh,
says.
Louis, Carlo Gambino was there.
I don't know. He's not mentioning which Gambino, so it's hard to say, but probably Carlo, I would
Yeah, I mean,
imagine.
Carlo's the founder of the Gambino family, which
Right, exactly. We went out to DeMeo's house not too long ago. There's a video on Crime Spot's channel. It's only 15 minutes long, but we went to his famous Massapequa house, which now is like a hoarder house. It's crazy.
Wasn't it
And
Richie DeMeo? His name was Richard.
Roy.
Roy, I know it was an R. All right.
Yeah. He had a brother named Pass and another brother named Hold. Hey, Pass DeMeo. Hey, Hold DeMeo. I just have to.
I mean,
I have to say that joke every time. So let's see your childhood home. Give me the address.
61-81, 77th Street, 77th Street in Middle Village.
Middle Village.
Even if it says Flushing, that's okay because that's the main post office. A lot of our mail always said Flushing.
What's crazy is that came up before you even said your address, Mike. So it auto corrected and it said it right there. So all right, so you grew up in this right here. Is this the back of the house?
Yeah, the third house. There's Gene LaJudas's house, the corner house. The Bodies lived next door to me, and we were the third house.
Uh-huh.
God,
so you were this house right here?
Yep, right there.
This one right there. Mm-hmm. Now, did you guys live in the entire house, or was it?
Yeah, like, no, they're all one-family homes on that side of town.
And did you have any brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I have my brother Joe. He's retired NYPD.
Oh, okay.
And my sister is a nurse anesthetist.
So now you grew up now right across from Juniper Valley Park right here.
Yep, I lived my life in that park.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you had all these amazing baseball fields and a running track. So a very kind of a different neighborhood than Eddie grew up in, and seemingly a very different kind of upbringing. He was talking about how his father invented the modern chop shop and how he left Queens and moved to Long Island for a brief period.
Right.
So very, very cool. And of course, you grew up and you're only 4 years older than I am. So we kind of are in that same age cohort where we remember New York back when it was really New York, and it was a real special place. What are your best memories of Middle Village?
The friends I made in Middle Village that are still my childhood friends, which are still friends of mine today. All my childhood friends that supported me.
Mm-hmm.
The memories of just Juniper Valley Park and how it was a great place to grow up in and hang out in. That's where you drank your first beer. That's where you smoked your first joint. That's where Juniper Valley Park in 1981. Believe it or not, 1981, Juniper Valley Park, Little Juniper, in this nice neighborhood, was considered the angel dust dealing capital of the East Coast. There was so much angel dust going through that park.
Really?
Supposedly. But this is under the cover of darkness. And there was, we're talking about the early 80s, the budget crisis, Mary Beam, when he closed the city down in 1975, and he was turning cops into bus drivers because they were laying off police officers. And that was 81. In 1993, when Giuliani became mayor, he really cleaned up the town. The Juniper Park Civic Association, a community group.
Uh-huh.
The woman across the street that lived across the street from me, Lorraine Shuley, got her soul. She was president. She pretty much threatened City Hall. I'll tell all my residents in my town not to vote for you if you don't do something about this park. Because it was a big fight one night, 4th of July, big riot. And one of our good friends got stabbed with an ice pick.
Oh my God.
He did fine, but like he was walking home and he was like, whoa.
Now, who was doing this dealing? Was it local?
Like, no, these guys came in from Ridgewood.
Okay.
These were like the Puerto Rican kids from Ridgewood. And I'm being racist. It's just, that's what it was.
It's just the facts, right? Yeah. No.
Yeah, they came by and a big fight came out, and, what are you doing in our neighborhood and blah, 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 and all that nonsense.
Right. So interesting. So you were also a Catholic school kid, like so many. I mean, I grew up around the Irish. I mean, I grew up in Riverdale, but in those years, it was heavily Irish. My building had the McManuses, the Manions, the Copies. I mean, it was insane. And everybody looked like
Woodlawn.
this. Yeah, Woodlawn, exactly. And everybody looked like this. So this is like super relatable to me. Now, this is your 1975 Our Lady of Hope School in Middle Village, Mrs. Panzone. And I'm gonna and don't tell me who you are. I'm gonna find you. All right. Let me find Mike.
Michelle.
All right. I think I found you.
There he is.
Right there. No, I'm just, that wasn't you. That wasn't you.
Wonder what happened to him.
I think I found you.
No, that's Sal.
That's Sal. Oh, okay. So
I don't mention their last names in case they don't want me to mention their last names.
That's fine. Okay, now I found you.
God rest his soul. He got sick from 9/11 illnesses.
Oh, I was here. No,
God rest his soul.
He did.
He passed away from 9/11 cancer.
Oh man, so many people are dying of that.
Yeah, he was a firefighter.
Yeah, it's insane. I had a kid in my high school who was a firefighter who died in the I'm just going to call it what it was, in my opinion, the explosion, because even the firefighters were saying that there was detonating bombs and explosions. All right. I think this is you right here.
No, that's Kevin.
Gee. All right.
He's an attorney now.
Where are you? Where are you?
I'm right there. You see the second guy? Yeah, right there I go.
That's you. All right. Yep. Okay. So there's the young Mikey Gibbons. And
there's Jimmy next to me, and Guido and Chris Jones, and he was a rocker kid. Chris Jones, I spent a lot of my time with him my early years.
This kid right here?
No, that's Teddy.
That's Teddy. Below him. Right here.
Teddy moved to Chicago after the 5th grade. It turns out we reconnected on Facebook. And it turns out he grew up just like you or I. He was a metal kid. He was into heavy metal and rock and roll and.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because in this picture he really looks like a rocker, and he's only in what grade is this? This is like 4th grade.
Is that? Can you go out a little? Can you zoom out? Yeah, it's 5th grade. That's Miss Cross. So
5th grade. And this is a great picture. Now I know this is you because we went through this before off camera, but I knew this was you anyway because it has that. There's the guy that I remember on stage, even though you were only a little kid. But this kind of captures it right here for me. Just that you were just so filled with energy and looking.
Man. Back then, I was so bouncing off the walls. I wish it was the same today.
And then, of course, I like to think I'm a observant dude, and I have to say that you have the hands of a guitar player already at a young age.
I wish I was playing. I wish I started that young.
Nimble fingers and long fingers. Eddie has huge hands too. I was looking at his hands as well. I notice these things because I'm a drummer and a bassist, and I notice like musicians' hands. This is kind of an interesting looking cat right here. Who was he?
Mark, he lives in Arkansas now, I do believe.
And
he's doing well. He was a military guy, from what I understand. I think he was a military guy.
Interesting. So, did any of these kids because I'm always kind of curious. Like, did any of these kids ever turn into like drug addict? Like, anyone die of ODs or anything?
No, everybody's still about. Everybody.
Yeah. Maybe it's because of the Catholic school.
There's one guy in this picture. I know, honestly, man, I'd rather not.
We're not going to go there then.
He fell on hard times, and he's at home right now with his mom or dad. I think his dad passed away, and he fell on the hard times. It didn't work out. From what I understand, these days he's still at home in Middle Village.
Uh-huh.
And a girl left him, some girl, and he really went off. And really got him in here, and he looks like a Lord of the Rings character right now, like Merlin
Oh
or Gandalf.
man.
He looks like Gandalf or somebody like.
So
But
yeah.
he has diabetes. They had to take some of his foot off. They'd amputate like
Oh
surgery.
my
And
God. Yeah. I mean, there's
one
always
guy in this picture is dead.
going to be one. It's unfortunate, but especially a lot of people were casualties. But it seems like most of these kids turned out, pretty okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then,
yeah,
and there you are again. You don't look quite as impish, quite as
yeah, yeah.
quite as mischievous. Although still, guitar player hands right here. So anyhow, just always interesting to see how people grew up. And I grew up with a lot of Catholic school kids, because again, I grew up in a very Irish neighborhood, so I can really relate to these photographs like crazy. So before we get into, of course, the band.
That teacher, we had him for sixth grade, Mr. McHugh. He just recently retired about 4 or 5 years ago. That guy spent 50 years teaching Our Lady of Hope Grammar School.
Oh my God. Yeah,
50 years he was in that school.
there's
Yeah,
a
Mr. McHugh. God bless him.
there's a few
Almost the
people.
same, young and youthful looking, from what I understand.
Really? Yeah,
Still
guys like
same beard, drove a white Camaro, like was cool as shit, cool as ice back in the day.
That's cool, man. Yeah, there's a lot of people up in the parish up here, St. Gabriel's, who are still there from the 70s. So it must be like a cultural thing.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm just looking at the girls because, like, was
Yeah.
everyone in love with this one here?
I'm sorry?
Was every boy in love with this girl right here?
Yeah, pretty much. And she just posted a pic from where is she? She's in Mexico right now on the beach.
Oh, no kidding.
God bless her, Michelle. She was great, man. She's and hot and cool, like super cool.
Yeah, she looks like actually, not to bring up a macabre, but she looks like one of the victims of Son of Sam, a woman named Donna Loria.
Thank God.
And
Well, she's Italian, so
yeah, well, actually, I wanted to talk about that because I just came out of the blue in your life. You had no idea who this weirdo was who wanted to do an interview, but we spent the last 2 years diving deep into the Son of Sam case up in Yonkers and interviewing Berkowitz's friends. Now, you were probably a little too young, but do you remember Queens and Son of Sam?
bro, God gifted me with this crazy memory, and I remember specific days from 1976. I remember what color socks I wore in 1973. Like
on that note, before we get into your answer, I have to say that when we first spoke, let me find the photograph here. When we first spoke, the first time I ever spoke to you, I told you about the time I first saw you at at the Guar show at the Ritz, and you said to me, "Yep, August 2nd, 1991." And at that moment, Mike, I realized I was talking to someone very special because here's this ticket stub. And
I could go through all the dates of the shows we played. I know them all.
Are you like on the spectrum? I mean, I'm not kidding. Like, do you have like some weird autistic ability?
No,
with
I wish
dates?
I had a photographic memory. Would have made school a lot easier than studying. But I just remember things. I just remember certain places.
So then, Son of Sam, we were in the middle of that, but I just wanted to let people know that like Mike's memory is unbelievable with his dates and whatnot. So go ahead.
I just remember all the girls in the neighborhood being frightened, all the teenage girls, and they were just like the movie Summer of Sam. They were dyeing their hair. They were afraid to walk home at night. My brother and his friends, Brian Coulter and Larry Jimbalvo and Petey Hudhoffer and all the guys that were like 6, 7 years older, they would walk girls home and they'd be carrying baseball bats over their shoulders. They would walk, like if a girl was hanging out in Juniper Valley Park in the park,
right
across Cordell Avenue, they'd walk her home with baseball bats, and the cops were cool with it. The cops were like, "All right,
yeah, I mean,
you know what to do."
Right. Yeah. I mean, the whole city must have been on edge, especially though in Queens and in the white sort of what they call the white ethnic areas, because the Italian and the Irish neighborhoods. That's where he was stalking, man.
Yeah, I mean, there was plenty of that. Like you see in the movie, there was a lot of guys walking the streets and down Juniper Boulevard South and then Juniper Boulevard North, saying, if we find you, you better hope the cops get you before we do. You're gonna really.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, it was the fat, lonely, pathetic incel David Berkowitz up in Yonkers just
Yeah.
wigging out. I mean, this guy was just out of his freaking mind.
Over a
And
parking ticket, he got busted. It's crazy, right?
it's insane. And you know, we went through that whole thing in our video series because we started out thinking that he was part of a cult. Like that's kind of what's
Sure,
popular.
everybody did at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah. And we realized through actually investigating basically every detective report that came out, and even his own writings, that there was no cult. It was just him. And the evidence of it is overwhelming. It's unbelievable. But it's a very interesting story. But yeah, he had family in Glen Oaks. His biological mother lived in Queens, and his biological sister, because he was adopted, lived in a neighborhood called Glen Oaks. And he was
Sure,
sick.
no lump.
Yeah, he was talking about wanting to kill his family. He was writing all sorts of, I mean, it's just sick stuff. So interesting thing. So all right, so the mischievous little bundle of energy that we saw in those pictures, how did you get into music?
Oh, that was pretty much due to my older brother and sister. Music was always playing in the house, and classic rock and southern rock, especially. My brother was a big, redneck Skinner, Molly Hatchet,
Uh-huh.
Outlaws, Allman Brothers. He was big into that. My sister was into classic rock, and but also my sister really introduced me to punk rock and hardcore. My sister started high school in 1979, and in 2 months came home with Ramones paintings and was going to CBGBs, and her hair was different colors, and what, my parents weren't too thrilled with it, but what could they do? She was 79, 80. She was hanging out down at CBGB, seeing Bad Brains and Agnostic Front when they first started in '82, and
Mm-hmm.
all all the old school real historical bands. She would always attend their shows. She was
Interesting.
she was a Lower East Side girl. They called them the Lower East Side girls at the time. She was one of the originals.
Uh-huh. Yeah, actually kind of similar to what it to bring back that movie Summer of Sam. They were going to CBGBs, and
Yeah,
they
sure.
were all kids from like Brooklyn and the Bronx and
Mhm.
Queens. So kind of similar sociologically to your sister, but of course your sister was the real deal. So she then introduces you to hardcore, but you and I actually vibed when we first spoke, because I made an admission to you. I said that when I went and saw Leeway for the first time, I was not really into metal. I certainly wasn't into hardcore. And the reason why was because my best friend at the time, Andrew Fabian, who would always go to these CB's matinees in those years, 88, 87, 88, 89. And he would bring back 7 inches and tapes and play them. And I'd be like, I was a nerd, Mike. I was into Rush. I was into Yes,
As was
ELP.
I.
Yeah.
Those are my
So
first bands.
right. So to me, that music sounded horrible. And then, so I didn't even want to go see you guys. I was like another hardcore band. And of course you guys blew me away with the metal, so you were into, so you were actually into kind of hardcore and these punk bands.
Yeah, I mean, I was able to separate the two. I loved Rush. I loved Yes. I loved Sabbath and Zeppelin, and I loved the classic rock, and I was into the prog rock. I loved Rush. They're my favorite band. I mean, the Man and Star tattoo is,
Oh, there we go.
I mean, but I my sister would be playing like records by Cro-Mags, like when the old demo, and live recordings from the board at CB's,
Hmm.
and AF, and not that I wasn't the hugest hardcore fan, but I loved the aggression of the music,
Right.
the angst, the the and seeing the videos of all the old schoolers dancing, John Watson and all those guys, and I was like, man, look at this shit. This is amazing. And so I went to CBGB. Yana Shapenko and my sister from Wench, Yana from Wench, she used to play for PMS. They
Hmm.
took me to CB's in December of '85. That was my first time at CB's, and I was fucking blown away. I was addicted. It was just like the anger, the energy, it was just like, oh man, oh what purity, what pure aggression. I never saw anything like it.
Right. Now, why do you think that was? Like, because you grew up in a seemingly solid household with two parents who seemingly, I mean, from what I can tell, they were great providers and a
Yeah, I
stable.
mean,
Where did the need for this aggression come from?
well, I don't know. My dad was a strict disciplinarian. He had no problem raising his hands to us. Or my mom. Or
Okay.
maybe that was, but I just loved the anger and the aggression, and it was just maybe I just have it inside me. I don't know.
So was there one musical moment that imprinted on you that affected you like and made you want to do this? Was that it,
Yeah,
or had that happened before?
I went to see it was Ozzy Osbourne, Magnum, and UFO, and that was at the Garden right after Randy passed away. He got Brad Gillis. Now I wasn't even playing guitar then. I didn't know what I just went to see Ozzy, and it was great. Went to
Uh-huh.
see Sabbath, the Mob Rules tour with Dio on vocals
I'm very
that
jealous.
day. And we were able to go as long as I brought home pretty good grades. My parents were good with it. As long as someone was driving us there and picking us up, which we lied. We always took the subway home, hang out with all the teenagers, But I'll never forget it. December 2nd, 1982, Madison Square Garden, the Signals tour.
Oh,
Now, Rush used to open with Spirit of the Radio back then, right? And
right.
the lights went out. One orange light comes down on Alex Lifeson, and he goes into limelight. And I'll never forget how that riff brought that crowd to its feet. The power, the it was like a Metallica concert before Metallica. Right. The crowd was in a frenzy. And I said, that's it. I'm learning how to play guitar. Because I tried to learn in 1980, but I was too energetic and impatient. I just couldn't sit there and learn chords and but by that time I went home and I said, that's it. I'm learning how to play this thing.
So was Alex Lifeson in Limelight, and particularly a live version of Limelight?
Yeah.
That's wild because I have the same, almost the same exact experience. Now, I have a few musical imprints. The first one was when I was 3, when I was listened to "Fly Like an Eagle" by the Steve Miller Band. That imprinted on me. But when I was 14, I listened to "Exit Stage Left," and it opens with Limelight. So it's the same sort of thing where all of a sudden he just hits that riff.
No,
and
Exit opens with Spirit of the Radio, actually.
No. The video. I'm sorry. The video. The VC.
Oh, you're right.
The VHS. Yeah.
The VHS tape. Yeah.
Yeah. It starts with that. What starts with Limelight, and I
have that in the living room somewhere.
Yeah, I still play it every now and then, and again, like totally blown away by that particular. But Limelight Live was great, and to me, no one ended a song like Rush.
Yeah, sure. The big crescendo, the big huge mountain-like climax. It was just awesome.
And then Peart would just hit that cymbal and choke it, and then it would just stop on a dime. I mean, and then a little double bass right before there. And go ahead.
You start playing. Now I'm starting to play an instrument, and I'm playing the instrument. I'm learning how to play. Then you realize how great Rush are as musicians, and it just sucked me in even further to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, oh man, look at this! This band is unbelievable, and they had for 3 guys. They presented such power on stage.
I know, and such a huge sound. But this is extremely interesting to me as a historian of Leeway because, Rush became huge in around 2008 again, like because all of the old guys grew up and we were all in positions of power, and now we could promote Rush again. So all
like
these
the guys in South Park and like
exactly. And you really saw at that point how many people that you never would imagine were influenced by Rush really were. And it sounded like Alex Lifeson is what led you to start guitar, and you became one of the seminal thrash and metal guitarists in the world. I mean, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass.
Eric Clapton, my brother will play. I'm just reading the comments. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My brother lived through Eric Clapton. How many times must I could sing every Clapton song from Backlist to, Just One Night. The live record was fantastic,
So, all right. So you had a great mentor in Alex Lifeson as your first guitar hero. And so then what happened with you and guitar at that point?
Well, I started taking guitar lessons from Tommy Coletti. He played in a band called Kingsland. and he was just a tri-state area phenomenon. He owns a place called the Music Zoo now. He owns a store called the Music Zoo in Farmingdale. He deals with high-end guitars. He's a success as far as a guitar dealer. But here's a guy, like millions of other great players that should have went somewhere, and of course, luck and timing didn't shine on him properly, like everybody else.
Right.
And I started taking lessons from him at his house in Middle Village, and he got me into, of course, Edward Van Halen. That's when I was just like, oh my God, when he was teaching me how to play Eruption and Randy Rhoads and the stuff from Diary and Blizzard.
Now, question, because most kids, when they start to learn that stuff, they're not able to actually do it. Were you able to do it? And did Tony see anything in you special? And
I had to get good. He was giving me exercises to get good, but I spent, an hour a day at least on guitar. I was never one of those 6 hour a day guys. I just couldn't do it because of my high energy. I wanted to get out and get into the park and do things and hang out with boys. But I would play at least an hour a day, and I would do these finger exercises, chromatic finger exercises, to increase my speed. Then he started teaching me theory, pentatonic, melodic major, scales like that, like, diminished, harmonic minor, and all this kind of stuff, pentatonic scales, and then I, he would start teaching me these solos, and then that I was on my way after that. Randy Rhoads and Van Halen. Those were the two. I always said to myself, as long as I could play Randy Rhoads solos and Van Halen solos, I'm satisfied.
Right.
I didn't need to be Andy James or Yngwie Malmsteen, or guys like that. Hey Lou, how are you, pal? I'm one of the first Leeway guys. Leeway. I'm sorry, part of Louis Gatz right there.
Who, Zent? Zentz? This guy Zentz here?
Oh no. You see him below Moe? It's Louise guitarist.
Where in the chat?
We call him Crazy Lou. He was one of the. I mean, this you want to talk about Leeway? That guy was there from the beginning. 1984, he started crewing for Leeway, promoting Leeway. Louis been there since the get-go, man.
Interesting. So I actually want to now sort of pivot to this. So you're this sort of kid who high energy. You got great hands. It's obvious that if you can play these Randy Rhoads rhythms and solos, that you have some talent. You're being taught by an excellent teacher, and you're learning all this theory. So it sounds like you were heavily into it. So now,
thank you, Mo. He's very friendly. He's a great dog.
So how did you get into the Leeway orbit? Because you were not on their first demo. Their first demo was Sasso, Eddie, AJ, and Jose Ochoa.
Okay, a little history.
Okay,
I'll try and do this as quick as I can.
Do it. Take your time.
I went to high school with Arthur and Sid from Gorilla Biscuits, and Sasso was in our high school too. I was going to high school with the original drummer of Leeway before any recordings, but when they were just recording the demos, and he was the demo. And I always said to Sasso, if you ever need a guitar player, a second guitar player, if AJ ever wants to add a second guitar player, please. Because Leeway, even at the time, were merging metal and hardcore. And I was saying, man, I can get some progressive riffs in here. This band would be great.
Right. So you saw something. You saw exactly what I saw, which was this amazing mix and also higher quality and caliber musicianship.
Now, Gordon Ansys from Agnostic Front. He was in Leeway during the Mackey era. He played guitar for Leeway, but he left Leeway for an opportunity. He left Leeway to join a band with TJ Scaglio, formerly of Whiplash and Slayer, and Tony Bono, God rest his soul, Whiplash. They were going to be called 0 Hour or something. That was the name, 0 Hour or Ground Zero or something like that. And they had a lot of major label interests, and of course these labels dropped the ball and they didn't pick them up, and they needed another guitarist because now the two guitar sound was established with Leeway. And full disclosure, my sister knew Zowie, the bassist, so I had a bit of an in for the audition. I still had to beat out 17 guitar players. So, but I mean, because AJ was like, yeah, it doesn't mean you're in. We're still auditioning you.
Right.
I was like, oh, absolutely. And my sister got me the audition, and then, as they say, the rest is history. I was accepted into the band.
Well, what was that audition like? What did you have to do?
I just had to learn. They gave me a demo from the CB's board, which, to be honest with you, it wasn't the best quality, and I couldn't hear like a lot of it was a lot of distortion, a lot of loudness, a lot of it was just distorted and loud. It wasn't like a and I had the old Enforcer demo, so I put that on instead. And I'm saying, I guess, because the song started advancing with Tony Fonto on drums and Zowie on that rhythm section. So I'm like, they changed this part here a little, and then, all right, I got it. And I would compare it to the Enforcer demo, and I'd go back and forth.
Uh-huh.
And I remember
Interesting.
saying to them, "Would you like me to play the Enforcer demo way or the live CBGB?" And I think that sort of impressed Eddie. He was like, "Oh, well, you learned them both. Good. All right, good."
I was gonna say that must have made them very happy that you, well, because everyone loves when people do work and especially on their creation, and then you ask them these intelligent questions. So that must have really, gone on.
Louis Gatz. It was Louis Gatz, Andy Hunt, and Joe Bosler. That was the first guys that rode for Leeway.
So
I mean, a lot of the other Astoria guys too. Astoria podcast, Tony the Greek and everybody else, and oh God, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just drawing a blank. I know your names. I'm just on camera, and I'm just
now the Mackie era of Leeway. Now I never even knew there was a Mackie era because I always associate Mackie with either Cro-Mags or Bad Brains. But I guess Mackie played for drums for Leeway for a little while.
Yeah, for possibly close to a year when Jose was still in the band. Jose was the old bass guitarist. Jose from I think Jose went to Bryant High School. I think I'm not too sure. Jose Okea. I just can't Okoa. I just don't know. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it the right way, but it's
right. I think it's Ochoa, but I'm not sure.
Ochoa, that's it. I mean, I'm totally a white boy here.
I'm trying to get Sasso on. I left a comment on one of his comments, and I invited him on, and he said sure, but he still has. George, if you're watching, email me. I gave you my email address. I want to get all these.
I'm sure Sasso will do it. No problem.
Yeah, he seems like a cool guy. I want to get all you guys on.
I'd say, you need a guitar player, George. You let me know. I didn't even know his name was Sasso. They called him Sasso until I bought the demo from him in school in junior year, the end of junior year.
So then what was
86, 87, right? I mean, by the time I was in, Mackie was out, Lou. By the time I joined the band in September of 87.
And so what was Leeway's rep now in the city? Like what was there any
very feverish? Here's the next big thing. It's up and coming. These guys are I remember feeling the vibe and the buzz, and we were getting all, we were on all these big shows. We were supporting all the big nationals coming to town and international bands, and it was great. It was from 87 and 91. It was really, really good.
Right. So when you got in the band, was it already, so I want to put up this picture of the back of the album. And of course, I have to just say one thing. Even though I loved you guys, I always thought this was you. I always thought you were Zowie. And I was like, who the hell is this dude? Because is this the drummer?
I had a friend who played in a band called Poseidon from Ridgewood, New York. His name is John Sheehan. And he when he bought the record, he goes, "How come you're not on the record? You're not on the photo." I'm like, "That's me, dude." It was a rainy day. Again, here goes the memory. November 15th, 1987. That picture was taken.
Really?
Yep, November 15th.
And so this is the lineup that you joined, or did you join?
Yes, that's the lineup I joined.
So now this is a classic lineup, and one of the things I was always impressed about Leeway was that you guys were like the Yes of thrash and hardcore and crossover, because you know how Yes changed their lineup a million times, but it always retained that core sound, and they always had good songs. Well, not always, but that could be a whole other show. But this lineup is actually quite different from the lineup that recorded Desperate Measures, but yet you guys still kicked ass. I saw the Desperate Measures lineup. I didn't see Zowie and I didn't see Tony in the band. But what did it feel like to all of a sudden slip into this band, and what was your role in this band?
I went up there to help record the rhythm tracks for Desperate Measures. I'm sorry, Born to Expire. I went up there to record the rhythm tracks. We're recording the Ghost tracks. AJ's in the control room. I'm in the other control room. We're recording all the songs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm warming up. I'm warming up on the floor, playing guitar, but going through like Van Halen solos and just shredding. And the producer sees it and he's like, "Oh, whoa." He goes, well, I got news. You're playing the solos now, because that's what was happening then, the shredding thing, and the speed metal stuff.
Well, not in New York hardcore.
No, not in, because we was really, he was trying to get us more commercialized. He definitely wanted a successful band.
Who was he?
Chris Williamson. He was trying to, like, we were actually technically a true crossover band. We weren't just strictly hardcore.
Right, and that's what,
especially with the addition of Gordon, the second guitar player, and when I took Gordon's place,
Right, and that's what appealed to me about you guys, was that there was actually, because again, I was coming from this nerdy place of loving Rush and Yes and ELP and all these prog rock bands. You guys like blew me away because I immediately recognized that you were amazing musicians. In addition to performers, forget about just the performance, just the music alone. But so this, all right, so I want to understand this fully. So when you joined the band, the songs for Born to Expire were already written, or did you have a hand in writing any of them?
No, they were already written. Born to Expire was already written. Zowie and I helped AJ rearrange certain parts, like, to the songs to make it a little more metalized.
And this is Zowie back here.
That's Zowie back there, right?
Right. So you and Zowie would help to arrange parts. Do you remember any specific
songs? Mark of the Squealer was one. Enforcer was the other.
Now I
can't remember all of them, but AJ had the main. AJ pretty much had everything prepared and ready, and said, these are the songs. Let's record.
So did you just mimic his parts, or did you come up with
your own? Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, it's a complete carbon copy.
But of course, that sound, you guys became one in a sense, because.
Oh yeah. I mean, whatever, AJ and I became we locked in like really good. Really
good.
And
I actually want to play a clip of two clips from Mark of the Squealer from this album, just for anybody out in the audience who is unaware of just the sound that Mike created with AJ. Huge, precise, powerful. Let's take a listen to a couple of excerpts and then we'll talk about it. All right, so right there, incredibly fast 16th note, chugging along the guitar, perfectly synchronized with AJ. Was there a moment when you guys realized, whoa, this is something special, this sound here that we're making?
Not me. I was just like, this is, I'm just playing guitar, man. I'm just playing a song. Now, I thought it was good. I liked what I was playing, but I didn't think it was gonna. I didn't expect it to turn into Heart of the Sunrise.
Now, another thing about this is that this is 1987. This is recorded, and Tony, who's going to be on the show next week, is playing double bass. That really the only other person in my knowledge playing double bass that fast and that precise. And Tony might have actually been beating him in terms of strict beats per minute. Was Dave Lombardo of Slayer.
I mean, Tony was right. I mean, Dave Lombardo was Tony was Bonzo and Dave Lombardo combined. Dave Lombardo was just some erratic killer, I mean, he's great. Lombardo's great. I love Slayer. But, and Lombardo was great. But Tony was just a pleasure to play with. He was great.
Were all those drum tracks recorded in one? Like, how did he? I'll ask him next week. But did he have to overdub those? Did he have to punch them in, or was that just him?
No, everything was live, recorded live.
Really, because the timing is perfect. There's not one mistake in the double bass. Yeah. It's incredibly precise. The only thing that I have to say that I wish was that the drums were more punchy on this. Do you have any issues with the recording of this album? Like the
bass is too low. The bass guitar is too low.
Well, what happened there?
All right. Now that we're on this subject, we started recording at like 6 a.m. We get to Unexpected, the last song. Everything pretty much goes off in 1 or 2 takes. Everything was pretty good. We're doing everything because we're precise. We rehearsed a lot. We knew our parts. Tony during Unexpected just did like like during as he's stacking the mark, dancing around the platform, you see a squish. Tony would just there's a slam, and like Tony just stopped, and he just looked. I remember him looking at me and going like this, like he was exhausted. He was exhausted. He was physically exhausted. We were recording from 6 a.m. and this was close to midnight. We had milk. This fucking guy.
Wait a second. You have recorded this. You recorded this album in one day.
The ghost tracks.
Holy
and then
shit.
The ghost tracks were recorded. Other than half of Unexpected, the ghost tracks were recorded one day. Then we did the doubling of the guitars with the overdubs the next day. That was another 14-hour day, And anyway, Tony was just too exhausted, and he couldn't play it. And so all right, take a minute, let's do it again. We do it again. Tony makes it up to that same part. Like where because it's a heavy beat,
incredibly fast, yeah.
Yeah, and he stopped again. He was like, I can't. So I said, well, we'll do this tomorrow. I think tomorrow we have plenty of time. We have a whole week up here, right, or whatever. Well, the ghost tracks in a day, the ghost tracks, not the entire record. The entire record took 4 days, to be honest with you. Recorded and mixed 4 days.
That's still incredibly fast.
Chris Williamson, the producer, and our future manager comes walking in and starts yelling and blaming Tony. I hope you have $700 to pay. We're on a tight budget and we only have this much money to work with. And if you can't complete this, I hope you could fund this, pay the studio back for the time we paid. And Zowie went off. Zowie. I was 19. I had just turned 19 2 weeks earlier, November 10th. 10 days earlier, I had my 19th birthday. Zowie was a 27-year-old man at the time. And Zowie squared off with him. Zowie was like, yo, you can't blame the band for that. We're sitting here, none of us have food in our stomach. We're sitting here, we're drinking milk. And fucking, Zowie really said, you can't be blaming the band for stuff like that. The guy's exhausted. This is speed metal. The guy is exhausted. Look at him. So we went to, we go to sleep, finally Chris was apologized. You're right. I shouldn't have blamed the band, this and that. So we go to sleep. Next day, Tony wakes up, boom. Have a nice life. Everything's done. He's done. Doesn't have to play ever again. And it was just all he needed was a good night's sleep in 20 minutes.
But wait, but Tony quit the band?
Oh, after that, back in May. No, not at the studio, no.
Oh, okay.
All he needed to do was get a good night's sleep.
Just get in there and
re-record Unexpected. We went down the block to AJ was like saying, can you get me we were doing our rhythm tracks and AJ was like, AJ goes, is there anything to eat or drink? And I was like, eat or drink? And this guy's fucking like a slave driver. He's pushing us and he won't let anybody leave the building. And me and Matty O'Brien, he played with the New York Hoods. Matty came up with us to help do technical assistance and everything. And we're walking down the block, and AJ was busy recording the rhythm tracks before I recorded mine. And AJ pulls me aside and he said, can you get me something to eat? I was like, yeah, all right, no problem. And the same thing happened with Desperate Measures. AJ was like, yo, can you get me some like peanut butter and bread or something like that? I was like, yeah, all right. Thankfully there was this Rite Aid that was open at like 10 o'clock in Warren, Rhode Island. I couldn't believe it. All they had was milk. They didn't even have
That's
bread.
Insane. So Kay Schreiber,
he was doing anything he could to save whatever budget he could pocket, whatever money he could pocket from the recording budget.
Wait, but I don't think we finished. So then what happened to the bass?
Oh, all right. I'm sorry. Right. After that exchange between Zowie and Chris Williamson, this child, I guess, took it out on Zowie and buried him in the mix.
That's insane. So this guy,
people are like, where's the bass guitar? It's not as bad as
And Justice for All.
And Justice for All.
Yeah.
You can hear Zowie. You can hear him, but it should be louder. The bass guitar on that record should be louder.
Yeah, and I for sure the bass should be louder, and I always felt the drums could have had a little bit more punch to the bass drums, but it was 1987. So we'll excuse, but the Normandy sound was amazing for guitars. What were you using up there in terms for your guitar sound?
Marshall JCM 800s.
And were they your amps or the studio's amps?
Actually, they were rented from Studio Sound System and Transport. They were rented amps.
Uh-huh.
They were rented heads, but like they were the same circuitry as any other Marshall head that came out back in the day.
Right, right. And so you had JCM 800s, okay, which are which came out right after the JMPs. It was
Right.
the first JCM model that came out, I believe, the 800. And I got to tell you that seeing you guys with those JCM 800s on that day and the sound that came out, I have to admit, I became a collector of JCM 800s after that.
God bless.
And at one point I had about 10 heads, 150 watters, 100 watters, because I had a little music studio up in Yonkers for a little while. But did you use a 50 watt or 100 watt? Do you remember?
100 watt.
100 watt. Now, do
Yeah,
you
they were 100 watters.
so did you own an 800 at that point, or did you buy one because you liked that
Oh
sound?
no, I owned one, but I remember I ended up selling it because I sold it because I wanted to buy a certain. I sold it to a friend because I wanted to buy a certain pedal. It didn't turn out to be what I thought it was, but then the Marshalls you see sitting behind me,
Uh-huh.
I bought them used from the Studio System Transport back in the summer of '88. Those were, remember the band EZO from Japan?
Yeah, sort of.
Their stacks that they went on tour.
Really?
I bought them from John Hanty and Studio System Transport.
So are these the amps that you used in Leeway?
Yes, these are the touring amps right behind us.
These are the touring amps. And did you tour with a full stack or a half stack?
I have stackers. AJ needed a cabinet too.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you don't really need a full stack. I mean,
Oh, I
even
know.
if, yeah,
But
it's just. Did you
the
play?
Bad Brain tour, everything was rented. Everything was rented.
Uh-huh.
We had 2 half stacks on the Bad Brain tour. On the Decimal Measure tour, we were doing everything on our own. So we were just using my Marshalls.
Was it just a Les Paul plugged straight into the amp, or did you have a pedal board?
It was a TC Electronic booster distortion pedal.
TC Electronic booster distortion. You could pick them up if you want. People would love to see that stuff. Everybody out there, I'm an equipment nerd, so I'm obsessed with how these great musicians get their sound.
I just wondered if I still have it around. I mean, of course, it's all. I always see it, and of course, now that I want to show it, I can't fucking find it.
It always happens.
Is it over here? It's the TC Electronic JCM 800. I mean, TC Electronic. I don't know what the frig it is. When we get off the air tonight, I'm going to walk right by it and step on it.
Of course, of course. So you had a TC Electronic booster distortion.
And a Boss Turbo Overdrive. That's what did it. Now, we would leave the setting on, not distortion on the TC, put the setting on booster.
Uh-huh.
Just let the overdrive pedal drive the TC Electronic, and that's how you got that.
So it was the overdrive into the TC Electronic, and
Right.
then what was your amp setting? Was it clean, or did you have the preamp up all the way on your?
Mine was going through clean, the preamp all the way, and the gain very low. The master.
Interesting. So you weren't using amp distortion; you were using pedal distortion.
Pretty much, yeah.
And what about AJ? Since we're not sure we're going to ever get him on here. Same thing.
Same exact setup.
So let's listen to a little bit more of Mark of the Squealer, because this is a great example of the dual sound. And also this is what we're about to hear is a great example of the brilliant change-ups, what I call change-ups. Maybe you call them something else, but when the music just stopped on a dime and went to a different type of riff. So everybody, this is the second excerpt from Mark of the Squealer.
What the hell is this?
So I asked Eddie last week whose decision was it to raise the guitar level at that second breakdown right before the "You're Gonna Get Yours," because it was raised on the fader board.
Yeah, Tom Soares did that.
Tom Soares.
Yeah, the engineer.
Was that like a musical memory that you remember him going, "I'm gonna raise the guitars here"?
I remember him saying it would sound really good if the guitars were a tad bit louder when the band comes back in. So that's what he did.
Yeah, I mean, that was something I always, and I'm sure every Leeway fan out there, because it's those kind of things that we react to viscerally that just get us going. I mean, as Leeway fans. But what so these were already written, so you weren't part of the writing process of these songs.
No.
But what was the whole deal with these, because it goes into this, it's coming out, you're playing the solo, your fast solo, and then all of a sudden everything just kind of goes into this halftime thing and breakdowns. I mean, very few bands were doing that at the time. What was the whole, I'm not even sure what I'm trying to ask here, but like, how did all that come about?
That's what AJ wrote. That's what he was feeling. That was the mix between hardcore and metal. It's just the metalcore, the crossover. That's what the mix was. That's what attracted me to the band. When I heard the riff to Enforcer on the Enforcer demo, I was like, man, hey, all right, this is good. Yeah, this is good.
Right, exactly.
It's badass. This doesn't sound like Agnostic Front or anybody else at the time, or Breakdown or Sick of It All, or
Exactly. And in fact, let's listen to a little bit of Enforcer, because it's another example of the brilliance of you and AJ playing together, synchronized, and really to become one here. So everybody, this is another amazing song from the album Born to Expire called Enforcer. We're just going to listen to excerpts though.
Sure. Where's my goddamn PC Electronics?
So who came in first there? Who?
That's AJ. Then I come in after him.
So was that always kind of the way it worked, where AJ would introduce the
AJ would introduce the riff mainly, and I would come in right after him.
Right, and the sound was just so synchronized and perfect. I remember just being blown away by that as an audience member. Just this humongous wall of sound and the precision. And actually, now that I'm hearing about your Irish background, I can kind of hear even though AJ wrote it, just that it just kind of reminds me of like old Irish lilts and the way that kind of old Irish folk songs and the way that they were phrased and so on.
You're going to say I can hear a brogue in you, because people say that to me a lot. Well, you sound like you're from Ireland, and I'm like, really? I mean, I lived in Ireland as a boy for a little while. My father, when he worked for Pan Am, got a promotion, but it was at Shannon Airport, so we moved back to Ireland from 1973 to 75.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, we moved back to Ireland so my father could work at Shannon Airport.
Uh-huh.
And he had a heart condition. It was better off. He wanted to go home anyway. And my mom could get a job anywhere as a nurse. So we went back to Ireland. I thought that's what you were going to say, but growing up in a house with Irish parents, we ended up coming back anyway.
Right. No, but
same exact house.
But, the Irish are just very musical people in general. Of course, very artistic, very great with, generally speaking, great with words and writing and a lot of great music.
Very emotional people.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. So I want to play this next section of what were we listening to? Enforcer, because this is another one of those great moments in what you guys did best, where you could just stop on a dime and change rhythms, and it was just absolutely seamless. And of course, this is what made the audience go nuts. I've never seen anybody go more nuts than at a Leeway show. So everybody check this out.
Tony thought he was going to overdub right here.
Oh, no.
Badass over. He thought he was going to overdub. What?
No. Hold on, you full of energy kid from Catholic school. We couldn't hear you because the music was playing. What were you trying to say?
Sorry, you know that part after the 4 bars, you're expecting a drum roll.
Yeah,
right.
Tony
thought he was gonna. Tony had a monster roll that he used to play there all the time. He thought he was gonna overdub it in the recording. We were like, no, drums get recorded, finalized with the ghost tracks. He didn't understand the process of recording. So, and even still, we wanted to like overdub it in there, and the producer was like, no, because it would have taken $100 away from in the budget.
Honestly, I don't even think it was necessary in retrospect. I certainly don't miss it. And
I mean, yeah, but you know, it would have been cool. Tony used to do this. The man's got the Magnum.
Yeah. But just that whole thing. And so, what did it feel like being on stage? Now, you seem to be into your own world up there. You know, headbanging and doing your thing. Did you actually notice the audience at all and feed off of it?
I was really thankful for everybody that showed up. I would always smile at people and wave, like, you know, just thank you for coming. I was, you know, I've never said anything to the mic, you know, but I always would be like, thank you, you know. I was very thankful for what I had, the experiences I've had.
All right, so now Born to Expire, it's out. You guys are touring. I think I saw you guys in '91. So
it should have been out a year earlier, honestly. Well, yeah, a year earlier.
Right, and that's kind of the part of the tragedy of this band, in a sense, is that
total tragedy.
Yeah, the timing didn't work. You want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, I mean, we recorded in '87. We wanted it released by February of '88, and again, this Chris Williamson guy wanted to get a better distribution deal for it. So he takes the album and he tries to shop it for a distribution deal. And nobody's, you know, he's a greedy guy, man, a real unscrupulous character, a real greedy guy. People were like, you're asking too much money. And Pokey at the time, by the time he joined the band, he worked for Important Records, and he had the ear of the grindstone. He knew exactly what was going on in the industry. He was like, yo, Chris is asking way too much money for this record.
Right.
And for you and Chromax, he was selling us as he wanted to get a deal of us, Chromax, and Murphy's Law, the 3 profile hardcore bands. He was asking too much money, and eventually people were like, we can't afford to give this. This isn't Megadeth. We can't afford to pay you that. We don't know how they're going to sell. So it was a year delay, and then it had to come out in March of '89, or January 21st of '89. It came out. It came out January 21st of '89. It should have came out February of '88. We would have been a year ahead of things. And
right, and that year and that particular time period was critical.
Oh man, and we recorded Desperate Measures in 1990, April of 1990, and the same shit happened. He did it again. He wanted too much money. He took the recording, and he said, you know, and by that time, Profile Records was just like, we're just putting it out. We're not even making vinyl. It's on CD. Have a nice life.
Right. Yeah, you know.
Around June of '91, again, a year later, which actually is 2 years later.
Right.
I mean, that's what killed this band. Terrible management, bad decision making by the manager, and a record label that refused to promote their artists.
Well,
other than on DMC.
I mean, just the story alone of Chris Williamson lowering Zowie in the mix, that is a huge insight and a huge red flag for that guy's personality to me.
Yeah,
Because he was willing to screw you guys in terms of your sound, and I mean, that is huge. I was hanging out with a friend of mine the other day who he was a detective up in Yonkers. You may know him. His name is Mike Lorenzo. He was big on your scene back in the day. He knew Bad Brains and Harley from the Cro-Mags, and he knows
yeah, I
AJ.
gotta know him, man. Just like
You know him. I have several videos with him on my site. If you see him, you'll recognize him. And he owns a record store up in Hastings on Hudson. And I was in there the other day, and there was another cat up there named Mike as well, with a huge Cro-Mags tattoo on his chest and everything. Interesting guy. And Chris Williamson comes up, and this guy's reputation is shit. I mean,
no one,
yeah.
not one person, not one artist has anything good to say about this man. Not one. I mean, this guy, he wouldn't even, he's your management. He wouldn't even get t-shirts for the band. He wouldn't supply the band with promotional materials, t-shirts. This guy, he couldn't, we did the Bad Brain tour in the States. He couldn't even get us on the European leg of the tour. Because everyone's like, oh, he's got juice of tours. He's not as powerful as you think. I was the only one in the band that didn't sign his contract. I didn't sign his contract. I didn't want to be a part of this guy.
Really?
No, I didn't sign it. I said, I'm not signing his contract. Kevin always said, don't sign to this guy, no matter what. Don't ever sign to this guy, ever.
Uh-huh.
That was then, I mean.
Well, then how did that affect your status in the band?
I mean, he hated me. The guy disliked me, hated me, called me an asshole when we were recording Desperate Measures, got into it with me because I was like, that's not how we wrote the song in the studio. And he was changing. He wanted Eddie to sing a certain part. I said, that's not how we wrote it. And it turned out good, well anyway, and he was like, this asshole is, asshole comes in here and starts complaining. I said, bro, I'm gonna see you in the street one day.
Right.
And I'm gonna fucking knock your fucking teeth out. And anyway, he wouldn't even get. Everybody else is passing us. Sick of it all. Biohazard, Prom. All these other bands are signing to better management deals, Rush Artist Management, and they're getting better tours, and they're going. And this guy couldn't even get us an endorsement deal. Not even me. Wasn't signed to him. He couldn't even get AJ a half endorsement Gibson deal. And I'll get into the story. One time, Pokey, he was able to get the artist, the A&R guy for Gibson, Jimmy Archie. He was able to get his number for me to give him a call, see about, hey, this is Mike Gibbons from Leeway. I was hoping that maybe I could secure a half endorsement deal with you guys, or a full one would be a dream, but a half endorsement deal maybe. I pay for half the Les Paul, and and I dial the guy's number. I'll never forget it. I'm dialing his number. It's a weekday, and I'm on the phone at work, and I'm dialing his number. The phone's ringing. His secretary or somebody picks up. Hello, Jimmy Archie's office. I hung up. And I said, what am I doing calling? I am the artist. Why am I calling this guy?
Right. It should be the manager.
To beg for a Gibson endorsement when my management should be handling this.
Right.
Even if he got it for AJ, I could have piggybacked off AJ. Hey, I'd love one too, and I'll pay. I'll pay
right.
Our price. This guy did nothing for us, man. And as you could see, Pokey does an interview. I'm financing a documentary that's coming out. I'm financing it all by myself about Leeway.
And you are really?
Yeah. It should be the director, the guy that's the editor. He said to me it should be ready by Tuesday or Thursday, the final product.
Whoa, that's huge.
So he's watching now, and he might include some of this interview. Depends.
He could use whatever he wants. He has full.
Thank you. I said we're gonna have to go through Manny and talk to him.
You got my permission, man. No, that's nothing, man.
But we're trying to get. His name is Mike Belmonte. He does excellent work. He works on NYPD. He works on Blue Bloods mainly. That's what he does. Production assistant in production. And what was I saying? I was just saying something.
We're talking about endorsement deals. Pokey interview.
He found an interview with Pokey that Mike Reinhardt's did. Mike Reinhardt worked for Agnostic Front for a little while. He's Canadian. And this is when Pokey was on the road with Agnostic Front. And Pokey was saying the same thing. And Pokey goes, I'm not even going to mention the guy's name. So, this guy wouldn't even get us T-shirts. We We were on the Bad Brains show. That's why you never see a Leeway shirt anyway. You never see a Leeway record anymore. We had a record label that did horrible things to us, didn't do anything for us, wouldn't even drop us.
That's insane because you guys were the best band out of New York. I mean, and in my opinion, one of the seminal, forget about any type of genre, one of the seminal bands of music history.
And
You guys should have been huge.
well, Howie Abrams of in effect, he was A&R. In effect, he said when I first heard Born to Expire, I thought these guys are going to be fucking. I thought it was going to be the next Megadeth or Metal Church or a big metal band. I was hoping the same thing, but we had no promotion. The record wasn't in the stores. You could find everybody else's records in the stores. They always say word of mouth is the most powerful source of promotion. Take it from me, people, and all you new musicians out there that are forming bands and whatever. No, it's not. If you don't have a record label putting your record on store shelves in Omaha, Nebraska or Billings, Montana, you're not going anywhere. You're just not. The word of mouth goes as far as Pennsylvania from the East Coast. That's if it even gets that far. And it only goes as far as Arizona from the West Coast.
Exactly.
Because we were on the Desert Measures tour. When we did the Desert Measures tour, we actually had to turn around and come back home because nobody was coming out. There was no records on the shows. Nobody knew this band existed. Hence the Forgotten Ones, I say.
Yeah.
We had to turn around and come home. The Unicorn Club in Milwaukee, I'll never forget it. I think two people paid to get in.
Oh my God. That must have been very depressing.
You know how bad this hurts? I'm just and I'm watching all these other bands that
they're not as good as you. I'll say
supporting us, that used to support us back in New York, and that I helped get on bills, and other people didn't want to help out, and I helped get them on the bills. And these bands are now playing festivals in Europe, and I'm just like, oh my God, man.
Yeah, I mean,
this is so bad. So
And as a fan, I remember that. Although I wasn't privy to any of the backstory, I remember clearly as 92 went into 93 or 91 went into 92, all of a sudden you started seeing other bands started becoming bigger, like Biohazard and sick of it all. And bands who I liked, right, but weren't nearly as good as you guys. And then all of a sudden it was like Leeway just kind of disappeared.
Well, AJ did. The band did break up. The band broke up in '92. And then because AJ was going to form both worlds with both worlds are supposed to be AJ, Zowie, Mackie on drums, John on vocals, John Joseph. And who am I missing? I'm missing someone else.
Named because the coming together of Leeway and Cro-Mags. Right.
I don't know about that. No, I think that was just John's name, both worlds. I had nothing to do.
Oh, okay.
With that. I mean, if anything, Cro-Mags, there's no love from Cro-Mags for Leeway at all. And I'll say it, thanks to Eddie, Eddie Sutton, there something bad happened. And Eddie knows, he knows, I don't have to get into it, but I can, but.
It's up to you.
I mean, we were supporting Cro-Mags on the East Coast in December of '88. And, we all talk about, Eddie had his addiction, he had a bad habit, and we played the Chance one night in Poughkeepsie, New York, and the safe was broken into, and allegedly they blamed it on Eddie. Eddie stole the money to pay the bands and something like that. I don't even know if that's the true story, but that's the gist. And
that's the story that got out.
Yeah, and on December 23rd at the Ritz show, the Cro-Mags were headlining the Ritz show. It was the final show. Eddie didn't stick around because Holly was furious at him. Holly said, "If you don't leave now, I'm gonna fucking kill you."
Wow.
Drugs are a terrible thing, and it destroyed this band. It destroyed us. I mean, Eddie's on interviews. I mean, one of my friends saw Eddie on the band I formed after Leeway with Ferdinand Canellos. Fed was watching at 3 a.m. He was watching television with my PBS, and he saw Eddie Sutton on TV on public broadcasting. And he was like, Eddie was like, this fucking drug ruined my life. It destroyed my relationships. It destroyed my family. It destroyed, But, I mean, that's the rumor. Eddie stole the money from the Chance's safe. I don't know how he got in there.
Right.
He stole the money, and Cro-Mags were not happy with it. And, there was zero love from after that from Zero looking
Wow.
outdoors from Chromatics, you know.
Well, that's a story that we'll just sort of let hang, and if anyone who's privy to wants to talk about it more, but I certainly don't want to kind of
No,
go there
you
because.
know, I'm just telling the truth. I don't mean to be.
But it is true. I remember in those years because I was tangentially connected to the scene. Because up in the Bronx, I was friends with a lot of the hardcore bands up here, particularly one called Fahrenheit 451.
Oh, sure, sure.
Yeah, and they played, I believe, with the iteration of Leeway after you left the Adult Crash, Open Mouth Kiss version. And I remember hearing rumors of some bad shit going on that they were telling about. But I always found it to be tragic because, as I told Eddie, he was and maybe you agree with me on this. He was absolutely the best front man I've ever seen in my life. I mean,
Without a doubt.
absolutely electrifying. What I mean, do you have any? I mean, talk about that.
Oh man, I mean, before I was in Leeway, I saw Leeway at 1018. I saw them at the Ritz, you know, at CB's. I saw Leeway a few times. I was like, this fucking guy's unbelievable, man.
Yeah,
But I mean, what
just an
really got me was the March 3rd show when we supported Overkill at the Ritz. And Eddie,
what year? What year?
89. Eddie disappeared and ended up on the high balcony, the old Ritz on 11th Street. At David Bowie at a table. David Bowie was up there watching us with Scott Ian.
Oh my God.
And Eddie disappeared and climbed up one of the rafters and ended up singing to David Bowie on his table. And
Now,
David Bowie was very impressed by that, and he started. He wanted to, invest in us and manage us, and then supposedly Eddie made a homophobic slur, and that didn't sit too well with David Bowie. I can't remember it. I really can't. I'm being dead honest. I can't remember it, but supposedly Eddie made a homophobic slur, and David Bowie just said, nah, I don't need a band like that in my roster.
right.
And I was
Well,
like, oh my God. I mean,
maybe one day what we'll do with this Leewayology series, if it goes well, is we'll have a round table where we can have everybody here, like kind of talking.
yeah, sure. I mean, I mean, my documentary, the documentary on financing, goes
So
way
can you?
more in depth with it about how I feel about it, being the forgotten guy and being marginalized in the band, and um, I mean, Desperate Measures gets zero love, gets no love. I don't know why. I mean, Desperate Measures. I understand it initially disappointed some of the earlier fans, but it's a great metal record, and if we had a real record label behind it, all the metalheads would have came out for Desperate Measures.
Well,
That
actually,
is fantastic.
Desperate Measures is one of the seminal albums of all time. It's
Holy
an
stuff.
album. It's an album that everybody has to have in their collection.
I mean, but you couldn't find it anywhere.
I know, it's crazy. So I actually want to talk about. I want to take this back a little more towards the what was happening musically in the band. Otherwise, I could talk forever about all this other stuff. But I kind of want to get on the record a little bit about the music. So talk to us a little bit about transitioning out from the Born to Expire era and now going into this Desperate Measures era. Now you got two new members. You got Pokey and Jimmy Xanthos. And did any dynamic change in the band? Did you start writing more?
Oh
Like
yeah,
talk.
I wrote half the record.
You did. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and I was able to contribute more. I brought in all of the, I brought in like the more musically oriented songs. Not that they're difficult to play, but there's a lot more involved.
Right.
Um, Jimmy, of course, Jimmy Xanthos is a one killer bassist. Killer. He's like amazing on bass guitar.
Right.
I mean, this guy's able to play neoclassical Yngwie stuff on bass guitar. Yngwie on bass. That's how good this guy is.
That's insane.
And Pokey, of course, speaks for himself. Pokey brought in a lot more. Tony was that killer. Pokey was the groover. Like, Pokey.
Yeah, he
Pokey
brought a
in
much right. He brought a much more hip hop sound.
yeah. Pokey brought in the. Not. I love Tony. I loved Tony. And Tony brought in the Bonzo. Pokey brought in the Ian Pace.
Right.
Like, if you ask me.
And but could Pokey play double bass as fast as Tony?
Back then, yeah. Back then, Pokey was doing what Tony was doing, sure.
Oh,
But then
really?
Pokey decided himself, instead of snitches get stitches, he didn't want to. He said, "I'm tired of it. It's just too metal. and I just want to play with one bass drum. And I was disappointed by that decision, but AJ agreed to them, and I was like, okay, fine. I was overruled, but I said, Pokey, come on, double bass it, do it like the record.
He didn't even play with a double bass pedal.
Oh, he did.
But he didn't do the fast 16th
Right.
notes.
He didn't. He used to up until like the end of 1988. He would play all the Born to Expire stuff perfectly, and then eventually he just wanted to play, single bass pedal, and and that's fine, whatever.
Right. Well, one of the songs on the album that kind of changed the vibe of the band a little bit was, of course, Kingpin, which had a very hip hop sound.
Yeah,
Let's listen to a little excerpt of that for the audience's sake. So right there, you have amazing style mixes. You have hip hop influence, then you have, of course, kind of the rock guitar, the thrashy guitars, and then you kind of go into that fast, sort of
right
hardcore, right? So Pokey did bring quite a new sound into this band that allowed, yeah. How did he enter the band?
An original sound. Tony eventually left the band. In May May, his last show was May 22nd, the CBGB show, and Pokey joined the band that June. We had a show at Irving Plaza, the Hardcore Spectacular show, in that July 19th, and my arm was still broken. I broke my arm in a Metallica concert, so it was in the cast, and I was playing like this, like with a sling on. It was fun. Pokey came in at that point because Tony he was tired of playing in the band and not seeing the band going anywhere because the record wasn't out. They didn't release the record. Profile Records did not. Chris had the record out. Chris kept shopping it around. And I finally said to AJ, talk to this guy. It takes a year and a half to shop a record for a distribution deal. This guy's fucking us huge. And because he's looking for this millionaire, Elon Musk billionaire guy to step up and buy the record, and it's not going to happen, dude. It's
right. And it was clear you guys were willing to tour the shit out of this. You were going all over the country touring. It's not like you guys weren't willing to put in the work to make it. So it's crazy that this guy was waiting so long. I mean,
we had to use our friends' vans to tour, and this guy never did a thing for us, never put any money into us. And now that I look back on it, because he was just a low-level manager, he didn't have the money to do anything. He was a manager. He was just a fugazi manager.
Right, and of course,
if you can't get a T-shirt, if you can't give us shirts, buy us shirts. Where me and Pokey had to stop buying the shirts because we worked day jobs. If you can't provide for us shirts, basic promotional gear, and at least a Atlanta touring, because the shows were the record wasn't selling, and people weren't paying us big money. There was no record to sell. The stores didn't have the records in them. So Profile Records, they destroyed a lot of careers. They destroyed Cro-Mags, Murphy's Law, Leeway, if you ask me. I mean,
So how come you just couldn't get it? Did you even think about getting another manager, or you just were naive?
We were signed into a deal with him for 3 years. And he locked us in. We couldn't get another manager. I would have loved another manager. I wish we were able to hold out. But at the time,
I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead. At the time,
But
what?
nobody was signing bands back then when Leeway signed to Profile Records. Profile was the only label taking a chance on bands. I wish
Uh-huh.
they would have been upfront saying, we're not going to do shit for you. We're not going to promote you, but we'll sign you. We'll get your record somewhere. We'll put it in Tower Records down the block from the office.
Well, the question I have is, what was Chris Williams getting out of this?
He was hoping to get paid big money, and I guess it didn't happen. So eventually, then he said, all right, it's got to come out through Profile Distribution, Landmark, which was horrible.
Uh-huh.
They didn't do anything, you know.
Right.
I mean, sorry, look at the record behind you. See the color? See the color? The colors? We had Profile Records printed like 5 posters. New Leeway out now. It was black and white. They wouldn't even put any color into the printing. And the same with our shirts. Remember our original shirts? They were black and white.
Yeah.
Because Chris Williams wouldn't sprint for like color silkscreen.
Here's a black and white photo on that.
Horrible. I was just like, this is fucking terrible.
Who was this? Who was this?
He was in the band for a short while between Zowie and Jimmy. His name is Eddie Cohn.
Eddie Cohn.
No, Coen.
Eddie Cohen. Okay.
He was a Brooklyn kid.
He was a Brooklyn kid, and whatever happened to him?
He was another excellent bassist, Eddie. And he played with a band called Altercation. Then after Leeway, he started touring with Psycho Sluts from Hell.
Oh, no kidding.
Psycho Sluts from Hell with Bobby Gustafson and the supporting Motorhead in Europe and a big tour bus. And it's like,
yeah, I love their song, I Wish You Were a Beer, but that's really the only song I know by them.
Yeah, man. I mean, I've seen them 1,000 times at the Ritz, and they were always a good show, the girls.
Yeah, like what's up with this? You guys couldn't even get color photographs even? What's like?
I mean, well, no, that's the way we wanted that photo.
Oh, okay.
We that's the way we wanted, but I mean, it's just, oh man, it's just nobody. If you're not going to invest in your band or your product, it's not going to sell, and that's in any source of business on the planet. I don't know what they were saying. I mean, we were supposed to go out with the tour for the Desert Measures tour. We were gonna team up with Ken Creedy, and who was managing Typo Negative at the time, it was Typo Negative's first album, So Deep in It. It was gonna be Leeway, Biohazard, Typo Negative, and then as we got further west, Biohazard and Leeway were gonna switch states. And people were saying to us, like, well, what about this Typo Negative band? Because Biohazard was still on Maze Records before touring for the first album, before Urban Discipline. And there were clubs contacting us. You guys are supporting this band Typo Negative, right? And we were like, no, they're actually, this is their first album. They're supporting the other 2 bands who have been established and have been around longer. And the club owners out west were like, and in different parts of the country were like, wait a minute. Roadrunner is sending us all these promotional materials for Typo Negative, and we don't even know who these other 2 guys are, Leeway or Biohazard. Who are these guys? And we were all going to share a tour bus.
That's
and that tour never happened. But then Biohazard signed to Roadrunner, and boom, promotion everywhere.
Yeah, they became huge. They had I forget what their album name was. It came out about 91.
Yeah, it was
had a fire on the cover. It was like a fire, like a. There was
Urban Discipline.
Urban Discipline, correct.
It was the EMS, the ambulance, everything. Then they got signed to Warner Brothers, the State of the World address.
Right, and those guys had sort of like, I always thought that they were kind of biting off of you a little bit, Biohazard, because they kind of went to more of a hip-hoppy, less hardcore sound.
But they were always into hip-hop. Evan always had a hip-hop thing going on. He always wanted to do a hip-hop project on the side.
Right.
And he actually was doing it with my friend Ricky Call, God rest his soul, from the band New School. Ricky was doing a hip hop thing with Evan back in '89. And, what it comes down to is like management picked them up, Rush Artist Management, who was managing Public Enemy at the time and a few others. Scott Koenig, God rest his soul, he passed away recently. And that's what it comes down to management. You get a good management team behind you. And, you start getting endorsement deals. You start getting...
Right. And by the time Biohazard switched to Roadrunner, Leeway was kind of already on their way out. Like, you guys were already having seemingly these internal problems. And I want to get in... Go ahead.
I mean, we did the reunion tour in 2006 in Europe.
Uh-huh.
That would have never flew in the States. In the States, people would have been like, who the fuck are Leeway? I never heard of them. But in Europe, they still had a really strong following. So we do the reunion tour, and it's great. We're doing the clubs are full, and we're filling up places. We're doing festival shows,
Uh-huh.
and we do London, and I'll never forget it. I mean, London, one of the most major cities in Europe. It was a weeknight. There were like 40 people there. I was like, if this was Sick of It All or Biohazard or such and such or Sick and Right, this shit would have been out the door.
Right. And you guys were, in my opinion, kicked the shit out of all those bands in terms of just your live sound and your songwriting,
Now,
musicianship.
I'm just being honest as somebody that's being honest with everybody. My cousin showed up, my cousin Yvonne and her fiance. Now, I haven't seen her since we were 3 years old or 4 years old, since she was a little girl, since she was an infant. And she shows up, and I was like, hey, cuz, it was very embarrassing playing in front of my cousin who heard her all her life, that her cousin Mike from the States was in this well-known band, and we couldn't even put 30 people in the place, or 40 people. But the promoter was so happy because Leeway eventually finally got to play London. That all those years I wasn't in the band, Leeway still never made it to London.
Uh-huh.
Unbelievable. Then the next night we go to Manchester, and that was even worse. There were like 10 people there, and this guy must have lost a lot of money on the guarantee he had to pay. Because I remember the promoter packing up the drums, and he was throwing the road cases everywhere. He was not happy, that guy.
Oh God.
Sorry, bro. It wasn't my idea to play these. These are major cities: Manchester, London, and
Yeah.
like Leeway, the legendary Leeway. Can't fucking draw 20 people to Manchester.
That's a
It was
shame.
like Milwaukee. There were 2 people that walked in.
Right. Hey, Milwaukee. You felt like Spinal Tap. So
it was worse.
So I just want to put out there to the audience that I put a link in the chat. If anybody wants to call in and ask Mike a question, you're perfectly welcome to. Just please know that once you get into the studio, you have to turn off your YouTube feed because there is a delay and it'll kind of screw everything up if we bring you on and you're still watching YouTube. So
that reminds me of the Howard Stern show. Remember when people would call in, Howard would be like, lower your radio.
Yeah. It's crazy. You don't even realize until you experience it. But the link is also in the description at the top of the description for people. So anybody, if you want to, while I can carry on this interview with Mike, if anybody wants to call in, feel free to call in.
Got a nasty fart, man.
Oh man,
dude.
I can just imagine. There's nothing worse than a dog fart. That's for sure.
It's terrible, bro.
All right, so I want to talk a little bit about. I want to. Our audience is saying, "Hey, our audience is saying, we got to get this on a positive note. I like this guy and don't want to leave him depressed." So
no, I'm not depressed. It's going good, bro. Thank you, but it's depressing being in a band without a proper management team or a record label behind you. Don't even do it.
Right, and especially when you know you're good. I mean, you guys had to know that you were on a different level than everyone else.
To the people that are watching right now, I swear to God, I made more money and had a better time. I can't say better time. In the later years, I had a better time doing a cover band I was in, playing bars, playing Judas Priest, Maiden, Deep Purple, Zeppelin, Sabbath songs for free beer and $200. And it was great. It was so much more fun than the final years of Leeway, than the last year of Leeway.
Right. But still, you were there for those great years, and it must have been something special being in front of those crowds and having like the Ritz.
It was. But the downside of it was, listen, I don't need to sound like Gene Simmons here, but the downside of it is, where is the productivity? Where is the money? You need money to live. Everybody still had to work a day job, and
there's no shame in that. Absolutely.
We're supporting Overkill and Testament and sold out shows in Exodus and Bad Brains and freaking and there's just you don't see any financial. You need money to live, to put food in your belly.
Right.
And I'll never forget the guy from Rocket Studio, Dave, the English guy from Rocket Studio. He always said to me, all the bands that are rehearsing in here, He goes, you see them going from Studio C to Studio B to Studio A, except for you and Chromags. All you and Chromags end up in Studio C, and if there's no money coming in, you have to start looking at the management. And your manager is a bad manager. And he's talking about Chris Williamson.
Right. So I want to talk about one of my favorite Leeway songs, and I've always kind of wanted the backstory.
He's funny. He had chili for lunch. He's fought like crazy. I
Yeah.
think it's called chili. Forget it, bro.
So one of the great songs, one of the most epic songs ever written, in my opinion, of any band that exists, but certainly your guys, was a song called "The Future Ain't What It Used to Be." It's the last song on Desperate Measures. It takes the album out, and in many ways encapsulates the feeling of those times for me personally. And so why don't we play the intro? I have 3 excerpts that I want to play the audience. Let's play the intro just so they can feel this song. And then I kind of want to get a little bit of a backstory of the song, and then from there we'll sort of start taking it on out. So let's just play a couple of excerpts of "The Future Ain't What It Used to Be."
He does think he's walk away.
Kick it when the sun don't shine.
So talk to us about this song.
Uncle Sam is in his
rocking chair.
It's Eddie's. To me, it seems like it's Eddie's way of saying we had so much hope at one point, and it's just nothing productive's coming to this band, and it's really sad, and it's discouraging. Especially the outro, when you play that, it's just another wasted day. Every day I would get up and I'd be in this band if they would, every day I would wake up and go to work and I'd say, if my band had different management and a better record label, who knows? I might be living I might be a professional, getting paid as a professional musician instead of hauling beer and being a city bus driver and a state police officer, state code officer.
But who wrote this song, and how did it
Me and AJ wrote the riffs.
You and AJ wrote the riffs.
Yeah.
Okay. And then of course the great lyrics. But yeah, so let's play the middle section, of course, because this is another one of those great Leeway moments where you have your solo and nobody's soloing.
I wrote that riff, and I'll never forget. My friend goes, "Whoa, somebody likes Exodus." It was funny when he goes, "Oh, somebody likes Exodus," and I was like, "That's me."
So you wrote the middle part, the section.
Yeah. AJ wrote like AJ wrote the main riff.
Right. All right, cool. So let's listen to this. So let's listen to the solo. You wrote the end because the end is the most brilliant part. Right. So let's listen to the solo, to the breakdown. So this is a great Mike Gibbons soloing, and then his amazing breakdown. This is like one of the best I've ever heard. And then let's take them out with the end.
Fucking Pokey, man.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I mentioned this to Eddie.
Pokey just always delivered, man.
Yo, I mentioned this to Eddie last week, but he seemed to be more of a feel guy than a technical guy. I said that particular passage, first of all, Desperate Measures was great because you could finally hear the bass and you could hear the crispness of the drums, which was
And Kaiser, thank you. It's a tremendous guitar sound, and the record gets no love, bro.
huge,
I don't understand it.
huge.
A monster record. It should have been huge in Metalheads if we had a better record label.
Right. But
finally,
you know,
I'm sorry. Finally, before he made A&R, he was one of the oh God, he worked in the promotion department. Fred Feldman, God bless him. I hope he's well. Fred Feldman said to the president of Profile Records, "Listen, just drop this band, let them go. What would it take to make them successful?" And Fred was like, "You got to do this. You got to put this much money into them. You got to put, come on, you got to treat them like they're your Metallica."
right.
And he was like, "Nah." And we get dropped from Profile Records, and me and AJ were ecstatic. We were like, "Finally, we're free." And at that time, bad timing, grunge was just crashing through the world.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Nobody picked us up. I'm sorry, go ahead, Manny.
No, it's fine. I forgot to ask this with Eddie. The effect of grunge on you guys. I mean, I thought grunge was like this, like the invasion of the body snatchers. It's like all of a sudden, everybody was wearing flannel and into Nirvana, and I was like, "Yo, this shit sucks." No, don't.
Some of it was good. I mean, but when we were in Europe on the Desert Measures tour in November and December of '91, and I don't mean to throw my band under the rug, but Jimmy, AJ, and Pokey, all they were doing was listening to Temple of the Dog, Nirvana, Soundgarden, and Pearl Jam. I mean, it's like, and I remember I made a comment like, and of course I'm guilty. I had my headphones on, listening to my Testament and my Megadeth, and I'm like, this shit is, this ain't us, fellas. And AJ said something to me, goes, "Oh, wait, listen, just give it a shot, give it a chance, and when you go home, tell your friends you get turned on to something new." I said, if it's good, it's something that's great. I'm not getting turned on to this shit at all. But I did like Bad Motorfinger. I
loved Bad Motorfinger. I was gonna say Soundgarden and Temple of the Dog were the only two albums. Well, Temple of the Dog was an album, and Bad Motorfinger were the only two albums I liked out of that whole era.
I did like Pearl Jam songs, the early Pearl Jam 10, like around release. I thought was a great song. There was plenty of good songs, but like the whole Nirvana thing, it was good. I mean, they wrote good songs. "I'm on a Plane," I think, is a great song, but that shit just came crashing through, and
everybody was affected by it.
And Alice in Chains got stereotyped as grunge, and
right.
And I really didn't find them to be a grunge band. I really didn't.
But back to Pokey real quick, and then we'll sort of ease on out the road with this, because we're getting on 2 hours, and this is amazing. It went by so fast. But I said to Eddie last week that particular end part of "The Future Ain't What It Used to Be" really highlights the brilliance of Pokey, because
Johnny.
Huh? Yeah, because
I worked with John Crescio. His dad owned the beer distributor in Queens. That we worked with.
What's up, John?
We both delivered beer on the trucks.
If anyone wants to call in and ask a question, again, there's
he became a police captain in Asbury Park.
Oh, no kidding. Cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pokey knew exactly when to hold back, and that's huge in a drummer. You notice that he didn't even play the bass drums. He just let the hi-hat and the snare ride out, and then you guys played the guitar and you filled in the space. And then when he did bring in the bass drums, it really just like had a lot more impact. I'll never forget the feeling that end part gave me, and now I know you wrote it.
I mean,
yeah, unbelievable.
It was just, I always loved that fifth, that F sharp second note. If you're in very F sharp with the fifth of the B string and the F sharp note, it just always matched with the D chord. So
that's your Alex Lifeson influence.
Yeah,
getting in those.
Right there.
Totally. So the final couple questions. What happened? Why'd you leave the band?
Well, the band actually broke up. I mean, I remember AJ, one of his last phone calls to me was like, listen, man, let your availability be known, because I'm out of here. He said those words to me, "I'm out of here." And that's when he was going to do Both Worlds. Steve Apria, who was the big DJ at WSOU at the time, he was going to get them on when they formed. He was going to be able to get them on an Alice in Chains tour or the first leg of the Alice in Chains tour for Dirt. And it didn't go on as planned. It didn't go as planned. So they reformed. And you know, I wasn't either I wasn't invited back or I wasn't made aware that they were Leeway again. Which
Yeah.
we haven't created differences anyway. I no grudge, no problems, no hard feelings. I was moving along anyway. I wanted to just do something different because they really, when you listen to the material of Adult Crash, it really went into a grungy like direction.
It did.
While I was in the band, when we got back from Europe, the band started. You going like that guy Dave from Rock and Roll Studio said. We're going from this studio to this studio. We're rehearsing on Wooster Street, like in a basement, and I was like, man, this band's really, really, really going backwards, man. Even as far as rehearsal.
Yeah.
And
That's true.
They every time I tried to bring a riff in, AJ was like, nah, it's not for us. Nah, I don't want to do that. Nah, it's not good. And nah, I'm not into that. It sounds too, I'm like, dude, if you're gonna change this band into a grunge band, I said to AJ, people need something to hold on to. People want like the Born to Expire, if anything, or Desperate Measures. They want something to hold on to with this grunge invasion. Let's give them what we are.
You spoke for me, absolutely.
And they did Adult Crash, and as you could tell, Adult Crash was like, yeah, some people love it. I that's the record that was a stake through my heart. I was like, yeah, that's not.
I think there are a few. Me personally, I think there are a few moments on there, but overall, song for song, the last two albums, in my opinion, can't hold even.
Oh, no way, no way.
They can't hold a candle to the first two.
No way.
Interesting.
Open Mouth Kiss has great material on it, really does.
Yeah, there's some really great moments.
That was their redeemer from Open Mouth Kiss.
Right. And there's definitely some great stuff. So then just what happened to Mike Gibbons after that?
I formed the band with a friend of mine, Ferdinand Canellos from Woodside. We and Gerard Tui, Richie Cassia. We called ourselves SP111. We were like a progressive metal band. We were like in the veins of Megadeth.
Mm-hmm.
And the band was called SP111 because my drummer had a dream that he met Neil Peart and he asked him for his autograph. And instead of writing Neil Peart, he wrote SP111. So we named the band that. I said, it might be a sign. Who knows?
Wait, what did SP1?
We got no other names to think of.
But I don't understand. Was there any significance to SP111? Like
no, it was just a dream that my drummer had.
Just a dream.
Wrote. So the significance is that Neil Peart came to him in his dream and wrote that. And we released 2 CDs independently, shot them to record labels, sold them at shows, and nothing happened.
Right.
I mean, I was able to get some A&R guys down to a local club in Queens called Sanctuary, and I told we'd be on the bill with like local bands like Cinder Steel or Sudden Fear, Mortal Remains, and bands like that from really good bands. And I'd be like, I got some A&R guys coming down tonight, so everybody, do your best. And just none of us got picked up, unfortunately.
Well, I'm gonna have to. I want to hear that music, by the way, and hopefully we'll hook that up behind the scenes. But anyway, Mike, I want to say that we could talk all night.
Yeah, sure.
Well, first of all, you have the Irish gift of gab, which I really appreciate. And
I didn't bore anybody, your boy.
No, hell no.
Anyone.
We're 2 hours in. We're just getting started, but let's leave it here for the audience. This is Leewayology. We could always have you back if you're willing to come back, sure. Of course, because I want to go deep, Mike. I want to get stories from every member. Then I want to be able to cross-reference stories and then have people react. I want this to be like the classroom on the air for everything that is Leeway. So why don't you, for now, just take the audience on out with some last words, and then we'll take it on out.
I just want everybody to know that I'm doing my own documentary about Leeway, and the finished product should be ready by Thursday, just for my viewing, just to approve it. And then it's going to get released on. We're trying to shop it to Amazon Prime and stuff like that. Well, hopefully it gets picked up by some of the streaming networks, but if anybody out there that's a true Leeway fan, if you guys really enjoyed the band. If you could help promote it, when it comes out, if you could promote it on the Leeway side on your own pages, I'd be I as well as AJ and everybody else in the band would be extremely thankful about it.
Oh, well,
Really
you have
thankful for
you
it.
have a forum here for as long and as you want,
And
and you say jump, I say how high.
oh,
Whatever I can do to help you, I will absolutely help you.
thank you, everybody. I just want to say, there's a lot of comments here. I just want to say thank you, everybody, commenting on my dog and everything, and thanks for being in the band, and thank you for supporting the band, and thank you for listening tonight. And Manny, of course, thank you for having me. It was great.
Well, Mike, it was certainly my pleasure. You are very welcome. It's an extreme honor for me to have you here, and hopefully we'll see you again. So listen, so
Bye.
Mike, hang out backstage for a minute while I take the audience on out, okay? I want to say
Sure.
goodbye off the air.
Sure.
All right, we'll see you soon. All right, guys. Well, another legendary one in the can. This was great. And I really do feel like we were just getting started there. But remember, this is Leewayology. We're not done. And we have the exclusive scoop that Mike told us today, that there's a documentary coming out, which I certainly didn't know about. And I don't know how many other people knew about it. But we're certainly excited about that. And we're going to promote the hell out of that here. So anyway, this was a very, very exciting episode for me. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Next week, we have Tony Fontau coming, the original drummer from Born to Expire. And that should be a great time. And behind the scenes, I'm working on getting everybody who was in this band at one point or another on our airwaves. And hopefully we will be successful in that endeavor. So everybody, I want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight and spending your precious time. We really appreciate it. And we will see you on the next episode of Leewayology. Thank you very much, guys. Take care.